Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight and braving the rain. I'm Fran Barry, publisher at Wellcome Collection, and if you're new here, we are a museum, library, and book publisher exploring health and human experience. We put on exhibitions, live events like this one, and we also publish books, and tonight marks the launch of Grace Spence Green's exceptional book, To Exist As I Am, and we're really proud to publish it today with our partners Profile Books. And Waterstones have just described it as one of the most powerful medical memoirs of recent years. We're excited to have Grace and Kyla Harris in conversation to talk about recovery, care, community, representation, activism, and so much more. Tonight's event is made of two parts, a 45-minute conversation and a Q&A, followed by a time for you guys to grab drinks outside and carry on the discussion. You can also buy a copy of the book and get it signed by Grace. And we'll finish up at 8 p.m. Tonight's event is BSL interpreted by Michelle Wood and Amy Hayward. And live captioning by One-to-One Captions is on the screen over here. And please feel free to make yourselves comfortable, move around. The event's relaxed. And there's a chill-out room downstairs on level 1 too if you need it. We want to create a safe space for people to share ideas, so please do be patient and respectful and enjoy. Now I'll hand you over to Kyla. Kyla Harris is a BAFTA-nominated writer, actor and producer. She's chair of We Crip Film at the British Film Institute and a British Arts Film and BAFTA member. They co-wrote, co-created and starred in the incredible comedy drama We Might Regret This for BBC Two. Over to you, Kyla.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give a visual description. So my name is Kyla Harris. This is my voice. And I use any pronoun. And I am a light brown person of color with a jaunty fringe that needs to be cut, a mask of makeup as I am quite tired, a stripy skirt and black and white striped skirt, and a jumper that says sex on it, in case anyone was confused. Grace is going to give her pronouns and a visual description and say a few thank yous, and then we're going to get into some questions. But firstly, I feel like I've always wanted to say this person needs no introduction. We're all here for her, the wonderful, talented doctor and patient, Grace.
Thank you so much, Kyla. I don't want to get emotional, but I'm so grateful for you all for coming. I look around this room and so many of you were so integral to my quite early recovery, so it feels so special that you're all in the room for me for this. I wanted to thank the people that put together this event, most of all, Sol. I have never had so much information about where my closest accessible toilet is at all times, which is just so refreshing. I want to thank the team at Profile and Welcome, particularly Mika, Izzy, Hannah and Lena, and most of all, Andrew Franklin and Caroline Elton for just being such brilliant supporters and backing this book from the get-go. My biggest thanks will go to Fran, my editor. It feels like I'll just cherish those 3 years we had where it was just me and her in cafes talking about this book, talking about where it would be, and I felt like she was able to imagine it before I could, so I'm endlessly grateful for her. Before I begin, my name's Grace. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a white woman wearing a blazer that I bought this week, and I'm in a manual wheelchair user.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I'm a power chair user for anyone that needs that visual description. Thanks so much, Grace. I'm so glad that we're here, and the rush by looks really good on you, by the way. So cute. I feel like reading your book, To Exist As I Am, was so refreshing, and everyone that I've been talking to, I've said, oh my gosh, I have never met a woman before that has been through the same process as me, even though we're different ages, have had different experiences in life, different backgrounds, different countries, and it was so fantastic to see myself mirrored in you, and I feel like so many people will. And so I felt like this book needed to be written, but why did you feel like this book needed to be written and that you needed to write it?
I think very early on in my injury, I think it was as soon as I could open a laptop again, so maybe day 3, still in HDU, I just felt like I had to write everything down. It felt like a way of anchoring myself to this new strange reality I found myself in. But as I went on, I felt like I had something to say that I couldn't really find, especially in mainstream media, and I was really looking for these stories of disabled people that weren't so individualistic, that weren't so kind of tragedy-based or inspiration-based. And so I think later on it felt like I was writing this for what I wanted to read as a newly injured person.
Yeah, kind of about the everyday, right? Rather than climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Exactly. I was kind of getting sick of that. I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to be dragged up a mountain, and I just really wanted to see some like ordinary disabled people living full lives. And so for me, watching your short film, it's personal, when it was just you and your friend kind of navigating life and kind of concepts of care and disability. It was just so refreshing, and I just wanted more and more of that.
Yeah, I think those quieter moments in your book really stood out to me, of the kind of chronicling the everyday, which felt so extraordinary when you put it on pen and paper, yet it is so ordinary. And I suppose I was really interested in your internal journey, of course, which a lot of this is about. And I was wondering, for you now, with your understanding of how focusing from kind of independence to interdependence, and that change and that shift in understanding of what both of those words mean. And I was wondering, do you get opportunities to talk to your patients about independence? And if so, how do you frame independence or interdependence to them?
I think growing up, I was desperate, and I think maybe as an early 20-year-old, I felt desperate to be independent. I felt like that was always the goal, was to do everything for myself. And after my injury, I really took on a new understanding of what independence meant to me. And actually, what was much more rich in my life and much more fulfilling was, as you say, interdependence. It was, I want to care for others, but I also need to be open to being cared for. And I think this sort of duality of care, which I talk about in the book, it's created some really beautiful relationships and connections with people and with patients. So it's really lovely when, if they're able to, they move for me so I can help them. And it just feels like this never-ending give and take relationship. And I think that's what I try and describe to people, is that there's a real nuance to care. Like, I can be a caregiver and receiver every day, all at the same time, all at once. Yeah.
And that we all can be.
Exactly.
You know, it's not exclusive to being a disabled person to give and receive that care. And do you find that you know, I love in the book, which I'm assuming most of you haven't read, and I have been lucky enough to, but do you find that you have those moments and that time to be able to spend with patients, to have those kinds of conversations? Or is it in the, you know, there is a moment when you talk about giving someone a cannula who was unable to move their arms, and that being a really quite profound moment for you. And do you feel like you get that time with with patients? I see you smiling already.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the pressures of the NHS mean not often, but I think what has really helped that actually after my injury is that I have such a visible scar. Like, it's very obvious that I have been a patient in my past, or I have gone through a physical change as such. So I think there is I call it like a scaffolding of understanding with patients that I haven't had to build. So even in A&E, when I'm with someone for 15, 20 minutes, I feel like there is this openness there with patients that I might not have had before.
Yeah, and I love that, because there is a before and after that you also that you also talk about, but that visual representation of before and after can be really powerful. And I think that does actually bring me on to also the patient doctor and the fine line between the two. How have you found your colleagues experience you now that you are disabled?
I think it's been a mixed bag. I think some colleagues have been fantastic, especially some senior colleagues, and some of them in the room with me right now. And I think
sorry about that.
It's just like having those allies and that support has been just unbelievable. But often I find when I'm working with new doctors, I am the first wheelchair user they've ever worked with. And that's a real shock to them. And I think the bar is quite low for what they expect I'm able to do, because they've never seen it before. And I found that particularly as a medical student, I found it quite frustrating when I'd be with a group of other students and they would tell them their jobs for the day, and then they'd kind of kneel down to me and say, well, we'll find something special for you to do, Grace. And it's that was quite frustrating to try and represent myself well and, you know, be really keen to do things, but already feel like there's this preconception of what I'm able to do.
And how, you know, I'm always looking for coping mechanisms for so many of us, right, who are disabled, and trying every day to kind of assimilate this ableism that we encounter. And yeah, how do you find that? What's the best way that you found to process that, as because it's going to be a daily experience for you?
I think after I was discharged, I think I spent the first year really not knowing who I was anymore and not feeling like I had much self-worth. And so when someone would say a comment that I didn't think was very nice, or they'd ask an intrusive question, or they would talk down to me, or give me kind of not the same treatment I was being given by other able-bodied students and doctors, I think I just accepted it because I didn't know my own worth. I didn't know I had anything. I didn't know who I was to object to any of this. So it's taken me quite a long time to realize I can set boundaries for the way I'm happy to be treated and the way I'm not. And I still get it wrong a lot, but I just got sick of having arguments in the shower kind of after the fact, saying everything I wanted to say to someone. So I have started to call people out a bit more, which is it's like takes a lot of energy, but it's really, it just means I leave the situation feeling like I haven't lost a part of myself, or I don't carry that burden then with me for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm. That closure almost
exactly.
to the experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I feel like you talk about how much the disabled community means to you now, and how important it was to you to start finding people that had similar experiences to you on YouTube, or, you know, in the flesh, so to speak. But what does it mean to you now, since you've, you know, I suppose it was 3 years ago that you started writing the book. So what does it mean to you now, and how has that changed?
I think really early on, I was so desperate for just any representation, just seeing anyone on social media that was disabled living, could be a life completely different to mine, but just people that were sort of doing, you know, having jobs, families, partners, full lives. So that was so helpful at the start. And then now, since I've obviously have a lot more disabled friends now, and a lot more friends that are kind of wheelchair users, it feels like a community I'm so proud of. And it's something that I would never, it's part of the reason I would never take back my injury, because it's a gift that I feel like I would never want to give up.
And I'm really interested, because I'm hearing you talk about a full life, right? You've mentioned it a couple times now. And I feel like presumably, well, I know. But I know that the meaning of what it means to live a full life has changed for you. And how do you define that now?
I think after my injury, I just felt like my life was suddenly very small, because I think all I had seen in the media is either disabled people on charity programs, or being dragged up a mountain, or you're a Paralympian. I felt like those were sort of my only options in life. And I think I suddenly just thought my life was much smaller now. And obviously over time, seeing different disabled people do amazing things, but also really great ordinary things, was just so wonderful to me. And I think that really helped me to understand that this could still be a really rich and full life. And I think part of that as well was not trying to fit myself back into everything I enjoyed before my injury. So not thinking, oh, I'll have to do that sport adapted because that's what I did before. It's kind of, in a way, it's been really refreshing, because I feel like I've been a bit of a blank canvas to then find joy in new and different things.
That's so funny when you say that you found that you were a bit of a blank canvas, because I remember I had my injury and I was in rehabilitation, and I thought, I'm a blank canvas. Surely I can learn how to be ambidextrous now. It's not true. I'm still right-handed. So, but that I think illness and disability taught me my sense of self-worth. And I think that, that sounds similar to you. So I know that, okay, this is like a big question, and it's going to be difficult to answer, but we touched on it a bit before. If you could start the NHS, or perhaps change any medical system, how would you change it?
I think, personally, for me, when I was first newly injured, I remember Sam and Tim from King's, my medical school, came to see me, and they reassured me that they'd get me back in next year. They'd given me all the support, which was lovely to hear, but it just felt, I just completely had no confidence in that, because I'd never seen any visibly disabled healthcare worker in my life, in any form. And it took me finding a wheelchair user in Scotland that was a doctor, and it just took one person to think, okay, this is possible. And so for me, I think more representation in the healthcare field is only a good thing in any terms of disability. And I think that's what I've struggled with since becoming a doctor, is that I will move to different placements and different jobs, and they'll try their best to kind of accommodate me, but a lot of the time it feels very temporary, and it feels like these accommodations are just for Grace. They're just Grace's special accommodations. It doesn't feel like there's any kind of imagination that there will be future disabled doctors coming in. There's no idea, like inspiration that there'll be more accessible futures. And so I think that's what really frustrates me, because I speak to a lot of young people that have said to me, oh, well, I was told I have to stand to be a doctor, because some person said that arbitrarily, and it really upsets me, because then if they don't see anyone like them in this world, then who are they to think they can do it? So more representation is my big thing, because I think we also make very good doctors, disabled people.
Yes. I also feel like it's a bit ridiculous to think that, like, you know, that you'd be a better doctor if you're standing, or that you could only be a doctor if you're standing, because it's like, well, what happens in your time off? Do you continue standing? No doctors, even in their time off, can sit. Saul, how are we doing for time? Is that, oh, we're good. Oh, it's a keep on going. Great. Okay, so since you finished writing To Exist As I Am, what do you feel like you've learned? Like, this is, I guess, the afterword. I'd like you to describe your afterword now. What do you feel like you've learned about yourself, and what do you feel like you've learned about ableism? And I know the two intersect, but they're also parallel.
I think writing for me has been the biggest tool in my recovery, and I recommend it to anyone going through anything, is just to write it down. I think there's something so powerful about taking it from inside yourself and just putting it somewhere on paper. It doesn't have to go anywhere. But for me, especially early on in my injury, that was so important, and actually really important for me to look back on. And I look back on those early hospital diaries, and it's really muddled and angry and upset and confused, but it's really interesting to see that. And I think for me, it gives me a lot of hope, because I feel really sorry for this girl that I'm reading about through her diary that was me 6 years ago. But it makes me think, God, who am I going to be in 5 years' time? You know, I think that's really exciting, to be open to change and open to recovery all the time. And I think what really helped me was reading back on these entries and looking at how much internalized ableism I had. I think at the time felt like, oh, well, I'm not one of them. I'm not disabled. I can't be. And I think I definitely thought that disabled people had a lesser quality of life, because I think that's what I was taught. I think I had to sort of unpick 22 years of what society and the media had taught me about what being disabled meant. And so that was so helpful to be able to chart that through seeing my words, years on.
And I love knowing that you have a tattoo of the word crip on your inner ankle, which is a reclamation of the word cripple, which has been used as an offensive term towards disabled people for a long time. And the reclamation of the word crip is incredibly empowering, and it comes from a very kind of politicized point of view of disabled people. And I was wondering what the best crip tip you've ever had is. So I would say crip tip, defined here now on this stage, is advice that you've learned from a disabled person that you then take on yourself.
That's a really good question, because I feel like I've met some kind of newly injured people recently, and I felt like I suddenly have loads of really weirdly specific things to offer them. But I think the other day I was telling someone about, and this just seems like a really nice thing, is like, make the most of theatre and comedy and shows, because you get 50% off, and your like PA or whoever you want to take with you gets 50% off. And it's just like, that's just quite a fun bonus of joining this community. So it's quite nice to share lovely things as well with people.
And the VIP parking.
Yeah, the VIP parking is also excellent.
And other than 50% off of theatre and cinema, I mean, I suppose I'm interested because I found that, like, again, that fine line between patient and doctor. And my grandmother, who, funnily enough, had a spinal cord injury just a few years ago, I find that whenever I visit her, she calls me Dr. Kyla. Not taking over for you, Grace, but just saying. And I found that I'm able to give her advice that no other occupational therapist or friend or whoever would give that wasn't disabled. Is there another tip that you'd like to?
Yeah, I think the most important realization for me that I like to pass on to maybe newly disabled people is that I hold on to your self-worth. I think for so long, when someone would say some comment to me about how tragic my life must be now, or whatever they would say, I would accept that and take that, carry that with me. It took me quite a while to realize that it was just a projection of their own ignorance, and it's not something I need to accept. It can just stay with them. So I think that is something that's been really helpful to me. And I think, as I said before, just kind of having these quite clear boundaries for myself, and not being so polite all the time. You don't have to be. I think I was such a people pleaser growing up, and I still definitely am, but I think you don't have to answer every intrusive question you get on the street. You can. I think I realized as a person sitting down, I hold a lot of power, because people can be so uncomfortable, even just entering a room with me. I can sense how uncomfortable they were. And I think before I would think that was, oh God, that's my fault, like I need to make them feel better. But now I've realized there's real power in that, and I can sit in that discomfort.
Fantastic. Power to the people. we have some questions. We have one question. Well, actually, we'd love to go to the audience because we have about 10 minutes for questions, and we're going to take one from someone online. Yes, to the gentleman in the front. Yes, I don't know about microphones. Does anyone know about microphones?
Oh, yeah.
You could come and whisper in my ear.
Hello, my name is Mike, and I'm quite deaf, and I'm interested in what people say to you when they first see you, and some of the things that said to me, you don't look deaf. Do you have anything similar?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I get a lot of comments. I think probably quite a lot of like young women in particular. Women get this. It's like, oh, you're so pretty, but you're in a wheelchair. But at least you're pretty, and some things like that, which is really strange. I think it's like, can I be both? Like I don't understand. But I'd get a lot of that. I'd get what I find really frustrating is when I'm in. Like one of my favorite places in the world is the Hampstead Ponds, and I'd go swimming there often, and it's I feel really nice there. But a lady the other day, an older lady, came up to me and just started asking me some questions, and then said, "Isn't it awful? It must be so awful being in this wheelchair." And I thought, like, God, I'm so happy. Like, I'm having such a good day, and this person has come in and said this, and I wanted to respond, like, "Isn't it awful being old? Like, isn't that that's such a strange thing to say to someone?" But it feels like it's allowed when you're kind of sitting in a wheelchair.
Like people have a right to your story, to who you are, to make judgments.
Completely.
Yeah. I'm judging you right now. No. There was someone in the back there. My eyesight isn't great, but I saw a hand being raised.
You said something at the beginning. I can't remember your words, so these are my words, okay? That when the other doctors or students were around you, they kind of felt you were probably limited in what you could do or your ability. And so as you qualified, you had the certificate to show you were as qualified and able as any of them to do your job. Don't you think that those same students or doctors probably do the same thing, unfortunately, to their patients? They look at a patient and immediately make a judgment about limitations, which does not help any patient.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what really concerned me, actually, because I was with this cohort and I thought, we are about to work with a huge number of disabled people coming into hospital, and you know, they're already ill or, you know, not feeling well, and then to have maybe this prejudgment put on them is horrendous. And I think I found often that I felt like I slipped through the ranks a little bit. Even when I was a doctor, some colleagues would say something to me about, it's awful, my cousin is now wheelchair bound. And I thought, like, are you looking at me? Like, do you see who I am? And it's almost like I wasn't seen as part of a community. So I think I'm really passionate about much earlier teaching and exposure to kind of disabled actors as patients for medical students, because I think it's all about exposure helps to work through some of that stigma and some of that discomfort.
And I also think that that's a really important thing that you kind of raised as well, is language, you know, like wheelchair bound. And I feel like everyone's like, oh, I don't want to get it wrong. But I also feel like language is a reflection of values, of someone's values, and the importance and worth they place on you or their scenario or situation. And so I think that's why language matters, is because it's a reflection of, you know, how you're valuing me or us or whomever.
Absolutely. And I think when I'm a patient and a doctor uses wheelchair bound, to me it completely puts this, without them meaning to probably, it puts this wall up with us. And I think it just negates the fact that this wheelchair is a tool for my independence and my autonomy. And I've heard it used in context with physiotherapists when they're talking about someone reaching their goals. And I just think this language, I think language affects attitudes which affect behavior, and it's so important.
Yeah. And do we have a I think we do have a question from the online audience.
Hello. Yeah, there's been lots of questions online, really, really beautiful questions. We can't ask all of them, but I'll ask as many as I can. So the first one is, could you share advice on how you manage not to feel sad about activities you can no longer do? It's been 8 months since my injury and I'm struggling to adapt.
I think when I was newly injured, I really felt similar. I think I couldn't stop thinking about things I now couldn't do, because it's quite hard to seek out the things that you now can do. And I think for me, it was really starting to value my sense of dignity and self. So, for example, my family and I would go on holiday to Turkey, and there's a place that I used to love swimming there, but it was among a load of rocks. It was pretty rough terrain. And my partner Nathan said, "Don't worry, if you want to do it, I'll carry you across." But it just felt like it was not going to be the same experience. And I didn't want to push myself and him to do something unsafe for me to not really feel great just because it was something I liked to do before. So I think that sort of pushed me to start looking elsewhere for things that still brought me joy, that might have been different to before. Yeah.
That's lovely. And one more, if that's okay, because there's so many from online. Someone said, now that you've finished the book, congratulations. Do you see yourself in the future revisiting your diaries and journal entries from your experiences?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think I'll just be really interested to know what I think kind of 10 years from now. I might be in a completely different stage. I think what I'm really looking forward to is writing about something different. I loved writing this book, and it just feels like such a relief that everything I wanted to say is in this book, and everything about kind of the event and my injury. But now I'm really looking forward to writing other stuff. Yeah.
There was another question that we... Ooh. I'm just going to throw the mic out to the audience. There was a question that you had. Would you like to ask that question again? Do you want to put your hand up?
Was that Chris?
Yeah. Oh, yes, Chris. Thank you, Chris. No idea who Chris is.
This is Chris. You've actually already partially answered it, Grace, but I was going to ask about language, and you've just mentioned it. So more specifically, how have you dealt with people who have offended you, either wittingly or unwittingly? It must have happened numerous times. Do you have particular strategies?
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on the situation I'm in. So if I'm on the street and someone says something, I'm very happy to be quite rude now or blunt nowadays. But I think at work, that's a really tricky balance. And I give patients a lot of grace because they probably are going through their own changes, physical changes. So I give them a lot more tolerance for things. But I think I do call it out. Now, I think what's been so helpful about writing the book, actually, and I didn't expect this would happen, was that when someone asks me what's wrong with me or what happened, I can just say, you have to buy my book, sorry. It's great, because then I think maybe they will, and then they might learn to not ask this question to the next disabled person. So that's been an added bonus.
Plus great promotion.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, do we have time for one more question? Yeah? Okay, great. Sorry. But then you're cut off.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. I really love that. I love that notion of healing people, right? It was amazing. So just thank you very, very much for that beautiful story, both of you. I wanted to ask your advice, right? Because I thought about when you said that you were at med school and some people would bend over, right? Do you remember when you said that, like, they would lean down? And I was checking my biases, and I was thinking, would I do the same? And I wanted to ask your advice on how, if you're meaning well and wanting to be helpful, and you know, like, and then you said, oh, they'd ask you for special tasks or things like that, and I was like, what would I do in that situation? What is the best way to be kind without being overbearing and mean, right? Like, and that's what I'd love to hear back from you, please.
I think I'm really happy when someone just gives me the onus to decide. So not assuming what I might need or what I might be able to do or not able to do. I'm really happy when someone says, you let me know if you need help, or you let me know what's best for you. It just feels like it gives me the power to make my own decisions and feel kind of that I have autonomy in the situation. So I think, and that goes the same for language. Like I much rather when someone says, oh, I don't know how to describe you or describe this, what's the best way, rather than, I think people get so anxious and uncomfortable that they end up actually saying the worst thing possible because they don't know what to say. So I think asking questions is about, that sort of thing is absolutely fine.
Well, yeah, Fran, we'd like to ask Fran to come up, and thank you so much, Grace.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, no, yeah, now it's on. A huge thank you to both of you. That was an incredible discussion, and I'd like to invite everyone to say a big thank you. And once we, yeah, yeah, huge applause. But the event is not over. Please do join us, carry on the conversation, come for a chat. There's drinks just outside the room. You can buy a book if you'd like to have a chat with Grace, get your book signed. So yeah, please do stay with us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone online.
Thank you so much, Kyla. Amazing. You were amazing. I felt like I was like, I'll just look at Kyla the whole time, just look at you.